Yes, I seem to be here. Hello, everybody. Elen Sentier here. If you haven't met me before, I'm a crazy mad witch woman from Shropshire and currently living in Shropshire. And I do native British shamanism, which is the stuff I was brought up in. And that's what I write about. That's what my non-fiction books are about. And the novels are also set in all of that as well. And most of them are on Moon Books if you want them, so you should be lucky there. And at the same time as that, I also do life coaching, and I use the magic as part of life coaching because I'm also trained as a transpersonal psychotherapist. And when I was training, this was 30 years ago, I found what they taught and how they taught it was so like what my parents had taught me, and the village and the old ones in the village and all the family stuff going back and back and back. So I had long chats with my tutors about that, and they said, yeah. They both came from a spiritual background too, but theirs was Eastern rather than Western. So they were fascinated by, hearing about the West's way. And I was fascinated hearing about the East's way and seeing how much they cross over, how like they are. And, well, that's brought me here. And excuse me keeping on looking at my notes. I'm slightly not here today. And, well, what I'm going to talk about today is something that is deep in me. And that's rewilding. Rewilding your heart and rewilding your life. Now, let's see if I can make this thing work. So excuse me, Pippa, while I try and make sure that I make this work. So we will start from the beginning, I think. Yes. So there we are. Rewild your heart and revision your life. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today because they go so well together and they're really important. And they're really important partly because of what's been happening to us, well, certainly since we really started to understand climate change, and they're vital for that, but they're also vital more quickly, that's not what I mean, more recently, because of COVID and the massive changes that have happened to us because of COVID and that we're having to take on board and relearn. And most recently, the massive changes that have happened because of the Ukraine war. And the biggest one of those, of course, to hit anybody is the fuel. We've suddenly, it's not a question of, oh, when can we give up oil? I can't manage it yet. It's like there's not going to be any. So you're really going to have to seriously think about it. And when we do think about it, the changes that's going to put on our lives, and not just whether you can take the car out, those changes are going to be massive. And it really means taking life from a whole new perspective. And for most of us, it's already been an enormous change, an enormous jump. And we haven't yet fully got the hang of taking the leap. Hopefully we're not too much feeling like we're hanging in midair like this, but many of us are. It's very difficult. Probably the one that's become easiest for most people to work with is working from home. It's like this, what we're doing today. We used to have conferences in a big hall and, several hundred or 1,000 people would come and the speaker would stand on the stage with a microphone and do their stuff, la, la, la. And I've been there on both sides and done that. But now, well, at first during COVID, we couldn't. And now it's got much more prevalent that people do use Zoom. My husband's on a Zoom later this afternoon. And this is one of the things that he likes conferencing with. And then next week, we're both doing a lovely wildlife webinar Zoom. And these are things actually which neither of us could have easily gone to before everybody got into Zoom, because the wildlife one is up in Scotland and I'm living down in Shropshire, and that's a sort of 8-hour train journey for me to go there. So I wouldn't be popping up there just for a couple of hours in a big hall listening to somebody. But now we've got Zoom, I can. And then the working from home itself, it's changed how we think about work even. We used to sort of think, oh, well, I've got to do my 9 to 5 or 10 to 6 or 8 to 7 or whatever our hours were. And you started at 8 and you stopped at 7 or whatever your thing was. Now you've got certain jobs to do, certain tasks to do, and your company needs them done by X. So as long as you get them done by X, it doesn't matter whether you do them at 2 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And if it's nice in the afternoon, you can go and spend a couple of hours in the garden and then come back and do some work later on. So it's really changed how we think. That's been a leap that we've actually made. We're actually succeeding on that. We're actually doing quite well with it. And now we've got this hybrid version of working. Actually, I know several people who don't like it much because they're actually quite happy working from home. But various bosses have thought, well, they actually need to see people to see that they exist or something. I'm not sure how that's going to work out. But some people are very happy with going in a couple of times a week and the rest of the time working from home. However, that's a leap that we've all really come to grips with quite fast. We've made it across that gap quite fast. Shopping's another one that's really different. People, say it's sad there's no shops or many shops have gone. But on the other hand, some of our shopping and online shopping is actually working very well. And more people are getting jobs in transporting our goods from the shop to us. Perhaps at least as many, hopefully, as lost their jobs who used to work in the shops. You can't tell. I don't know. We get statistics on both sides all the time. So that's another change that is happening. And one that's happening, which I'm very much involved in, because I've got rheumatoid arthritis and osteoporosis and umpteen other blooming wretched diseases, is with the NHS. Now, used to have to go in and see the doctor, have to go down to the hospital to see the consultant, all this kind of thing. No, I don't. I can do an e-consult with them, and I talk to my consultant usually by phone or on Zoom, and it works actually very well. And apparently, from my consultant says, it actually works very well for them too. So there are all these changes that are really moving our lives, making us leap in the dark. Well, not in the dark, but leap anyway, to somewhere we don't know. And it's felt dangerous as leaping this cliff would be. Certainly to me, I wouldn't even start. But I get the message, and it's a lovely picture. So we've got all this problem, all this stuff happening, all this making us change. And I forgot another one which I think is really important. 2 or 3 years ago, when I got the window cleaner around, I'd pay him by cash, and he wanted me to pay him by cash. Not now. I mean, I just had to get a new window cleaner, and first thing, he came around last week and said, yeah, I can do that now. How do you do paying, Mrs.? And I said, can you do back? So, oh, yes, please, anytime. Oh, and he really did gasp like that, as though no way was he up to handling doing much cash. But 3 years ago, he would have been. So that's sort of, woof, that's another leap across the cliff, another change, really change in our working, which means a change in our habits of thought, and actually a change in our lives as well. And it's the little things like that that are, to me, so important to notice the change. And yes, actually, they're all about rewilding your heart. Because it means coming at things from a different perspective, a new perspective. I love this picture, and some of you who've been with me before will know it. I've had it for a few years now, it must be 5 or 6 years at least, since it's been going round. And what it says, well, what the picture is a deer in the middle of a road, apparently going from right to left. And it says, things are not always what they seem. The deer isn't crossing the road is crossing the forest. Got that? The deer isn't crossing the road is crossing the forest. So this is a complete turnabout for the deer, seeing where her tracks were, because I think that's a female. Her track would have gone where she's walking now, and now suddenly there's this expansive tarmac in the middle of it, but it smells right on the other side, so she's going to go anyway. But for the human coming along in their car, vroom vroom, is like, oh, there's a deer in the road. How about my car's in the middle of her forest? You see, it's a different perspective. Instead of looking at it from the me point of view, the human point of view, I'm actually looking at it from the wildlife point of view. The forest's point of view even. I mean, how did the forest feel about having a great slash of tarmac shoved through it, being dug up and flattened and all this sort of thing? We don't know because nobody asked. But it's important, and it's all part of making this leap. We've done it in little, as I said, with using Vax with window cleaner and thinking about when we use our car and starting to really think about using oil and this sort of thing. But this is even bigger. But we've got to go there, people. We've got to go here. This is what's important. We can't have a planet. We can't have ourselves. We won't live without everything else. Without all of the wildlife and without all the forests and everything that lives in it. We're part of that. Now, this means really reconnecting. People sort of think, oh, there's a deer in the middle of the road, because they're not actually connected to the forest or the wildlife or something like that. And lots of people, I've even actually heard people who are worried that if they go camping at night and a hedgehog crawls into the tent with them, it's going to bite them. Well, no, it isn't. Even a badger won't, and the likelihood of a badger actually crawling into the tent with you is absolutely remote. They just don't. A fox might sniff around you, but as soon as you move, he'll be out of there like a shot, if he even got in, and that's very unlikely too. You might have to share with spiders and worms. That's a whole different thing. But people are so disconnected, they don't feel that they're part of all this forest, that all this is part of them, that she is part of them, that this is part of them. They do feel connected to the tarmac, but not the deer, not the trees, and not the forest. And this is what we need to do, is to reconnect to that and understand that we are part of it. And once we actually start to reconnect with nature, we start to really feel ourselves. I like this one. Go into the forest, lose your mind and find your soul. And I love the picture too. It really does mean this, because our minds are the things that are telling us that we can connect to the tarmac, but we can't connect to the tree. But we go in there and we actually feel really deep into that forest, into the trees, into the snow that's here in this picture, which is lovely. And the person is all alone. There's nothing human else around them. And I sort of take this as, I don't know that I can do this here. Yes, I can. The person looks quite at home. He's quite sort of Red Riding Hoodie, walking along with a basket and a shawl. But it really feels like she's at home there, and she's walking along a track. And she's got the birds with her as well. And she feels as at home in the forest as she does perhaps in her own house, home. I don't know, but I feel she does. I know I would be if I was there, but then I've always been connected with nature. It's part of this growing up in the old magic with my parents. I used to go out in the woods all the time. My uncle he could actually put up a fist and just stand there, and within a couple of minutes a wild hawk would come down and sit on his fist. Yeah, I know, amazing. I've seen it. He taught me to talk to owls and call them too, and I still can do that. I never could do the hawk thing. And he would sit with an adder, a viper, our only poisonous snake in Britain, wrapped round his wrist in the sunshine. He'd just sit there, and she'd be wrapped down with her head on his hand, soaking up the sun, and then she'd have enough and she'd crawl off again. And I've had that too. Because I'm actually not afraid of the snakes, and I'm not afraid of the other animals in the woods. I probably would be scared of a bear if I was in a place where there were bears. I don't think I'd be afraid of a wolf though. They're very unlikely to hurt you, and certainly not of a lynx or anything else. And there have been definitely cases recently of where people in the US have been walking down a forest track and they've met a cougar. And the cougar has looked at them and they've looked at the cougar, and sometimes the cougar's come to sniff at them and then walked off. So wild animals, wild things are not out to get you. Not unless you're out to get them. That's a whole different thing. But then, I mean, if somebody comes attacking you, you'll either run like hell or biff them on the nose. So that is a change of attitude, a change of perspective again. Of being able to go and walk into this forest as she's doing and enjoy the birds and enjoy the trees and enjoy the snow and enjoy the bits of grass and bramble that are growing out of it. It's a lovely picture. I might get it printed one day and put it up on my wall because I really like it. So there we are, we've got this. Let me shrink it back down again. And we can all get there. And there's easier ways than, going into the Red Riding Hood snowy forest kind of thing with your basket and your shawl. How about this? We can all do this. And it's so nice and so comfortable and so easy. Have you tried it? I'm sure lots of you have. Just go there, put your hands on the tree, rest your body against the tree, and your face and your cheek and your ear against the tree. And you may actually hear things. Did you know that? Tree bark moves, and it moves up and down, obviously, a bit like your blood, and you can hear it. And they've now got machines which will listen to the movement of the sap, rather, and listen to that, and you can tell things. They're starting to understand that when the sap sounds like this, it means this for the tree. So we're learning a lot about actually listening to trees and listening to them, which means getting in touch with them, which also means saying, I don't need to shut myself off from this tree. It's not scary to talk to a tree. It's not scary if the tree talks back to me. In fact, it's stunningly gorgeous and I'm going to love it. So we could all actually do this And it's high time many of us did. Now she's in what looks like a fairly wildish sort of wood, and probably not many other people around. But you know, you can go and do this in the park, in the local park. And that's another thing which is about rewilding, is you don't have to worry that somebody's going to look at you and say, Lulu, she's leaning against a tree. Oh, she's talking to the tree. That is their problem, not yours. You are doing what you want to do. And what you want to do does not have to be confined by what somebody else wants you to do. But it's hard sometimes doing this on your own without some support. And so that's one of the things that I do, both in the teaching and in the coaching line, is I help people get there so that it doesn't matter if somebody stares at you. It doesn't matter what they say, and you're not going to take any notice. You might not even hear it. So you're going to be happy getting in touch with nature, caring about nature, learning to hear it. You could sit in the grass there and watch all those little insects and the butterflies come round you, and the bees. There'll be bees in there, mostly bumbles. And listen to the birds in the trees above, and maybe even hopping down to see what's there in the grass. And if you sit there with your back against that tree, you get a whole other experience. You know, when I sit there sometimes, I really feel that the tree is actually cuddling me. It's quite gorgeous and quite amazing, really, and such a lovely way of getting in touch. As I said, it can be much easier to do if you've got some help. And so finding someone to help you through this, someone to show you ways of doing it, and someone to listen when things get a bit hard and when you're sort of like, well, I don't go and do that because there's too many people watching. Or, you know, I don't really want to talk to the trees in my garden in case the neighbour's here or something. And then if you've got other people around you who say, doesn't matter, what does it matter what they say? Then that really encourages you to go and start rewilding yourself. And getting in touch, listening, watching, noticing everything that's going around you. That's how to get in touch with nature again. And, you know, when you do that, that helps you get in touch with yourself. I can't remember what the next slide is. Dozy me. Yes. Okay, so I'm saying we can change. Now, this I think is a monarch butterfly going through the process. It's very gorgeous. And as you can see, it's going from the chrysalis, waking up, starting to break out, breaking out, coming out, and then sitting there drying its wings. But there's a whole lot of process to go through before we ever get there. That's almost the end of the change. Although, of course, that is a lovely dramatic way of showing it. Butterflies start as caterpillars. Well, they start as eggs. Just about everything starts as an egg, certainly in the animal world. If you like to call a seed an egg, then it does in the plant world too. Not quite everything. Some of the very, very ancient plants like ferns come from spores, but okay, we'll say that's a seed too. Technically it isn't, but it's doing the same job. So everything comes from some form of egg laid by big butterfly here. When they've grown up and their wings are dry, and they've often mated. So the egg starts off on a plant, and the plant doesn't get cut down, so the egg can grow and hatch, and it hatches into a little tiny wee caterpillar who promptly starts to eat. As soon as it gets out of there, it starts eating, and it's eating the plant that it's been laid on, the egg's been laid on, because the butterfly knows very well which plants her caterpillar can eat and which they can't. So she will have laid her egg on the plant that her caterpillar can eat. Probably where there are lots of other plants like that too, so that when he or she has eaten away all the way through that plant, she can go on to the next plant and get fatter and bigger and fatter and bigger and fatter and bigger until she gets big enough and fat enough to know that she's got to turn from a caterpillar into a chrysalis. This is so like the teaching process that I use, that, you know, the person comes to me on the apprenticeship, say, as an egg, you know, wanting to hatch out and become themselves. And so they've gone through life and they've eaten themselves, and they've got fat, and they want to change now, and now they really need help. So we help them make sure they've got enough food inside, and then I help them spin their own chrysalis, because each of us have to go back into this chrysalis form inside, emotionally, mentally, intuitionally, and we go back into that chrysalis form. And do you know what happens to a butterfly, a caterpillar, when it's inside the chrysalis? It turns into what I call butterfly soup. It gets broken down into its basic molecules. So there's no caterpillar shape left in there. It's just sort of butterfly soup. And then those molecules all come back together again, and they reformed, and they know how to reform into this beautiful butterfly. Now, that's quite a process. And I used to read Richard Bach years ago, and he had a lovely saying for this. And he said, and it was, what the caterpillar calls a nervous breakdown, the master calls a butterfly. Now, I think that's stunningly gorgeous. I loved it at the time. God, I first read that 40 years ago when the books first came out. But, you know, that was great. What the caterpillar calls a nervous breakdown, the master calls a butterfly. And that's what happens to people when they go through the rewilding, when they rewild their hearts. And it's really important. And to get all of that done properly, it's really good to have some help. There are lots of different people who can do help, me being one of them. I can do it as the training, or I can do it as one-to-one as coaching. And the same goes for other people as well. But it's really good to have someone who's at least done the process before and knows that, you know, when you feel that there is absolutely no light, no end to the tunnel, they can assure you and encourage you and help you that there is, and you are going to get through that. So change is difficult, but it's not impossible by any manner of means, and we can all do it. Stars do it. And that brings me to something else too, that all of these eggs and things come about because a male something or another has mated with a female. Rather, let's put it the other way around properly. A female something or another has mated with a male something or another, and they've produced the egg. Now, you may not know this, but stars actually produce baby stars when they die and blow up. It's a sort of complicated process, and yet not. And in their death, they produce all the material for baby stars. And that's part of, for me, a part of duality. That we need this I-thou, death, life, on, off, this two-ness that enables life to be. And the fact that stars do it really sort of says, well, it's pretty fundamental to the universe. At least it does to me. So we learn to understand more than just ourselves. We understand that we're not just ourselves, that we're actually part of a whole. And we are part of a duality. Now, going back to the deer thing at the beginning, the deer slide, you know, the deer is not crossing the road is crossing the forest. And the guy coming along the tarmac going, oh, there's a deer in front of my car on the road. And that guy is thinking of the me, from me point of view. He's not thinking of the deer point of view. The deer is probably going, shit, there's another one coming. Oh my God, am I going to get to the other side in time? But people don't tend to think from another creature's point of view or another plant's point of view. They may think about another person's point of view, probably only if they quite like them, or at least like the idea of them. We're horribly isolationist like that as a species, but never mind. So part of rewilding your heart is actually to get the hang of thinking as the other person. Now, Alan Watts was another teacher from way back, 40 odd years back. And I like a lot of what he says. And I found him most useful and most helpful when I used to do things with him and that kind of thing. And I just love this picture of his of duality. And what he says, as you can read it here, let's get it slightly bigger. Every explicit duality is an implicit unity. Now that's what I'm saying too. And this, of course, is the yin-yang symbol, which you probably know already. And it's the sun on one side and the moon on the other. So you've got the duality of day-night. Beautiful. And as he says, every explicit duality is an implicit unity. Now that's where we're going with rewilding. And it's a bit of a complex thing to get your head around at first. Not something to do very, very quickly, but something to plant the seed of, a bit like that caterpillar again, or the butterfly planting her seed on the leaf that the caterpillar can eat. So it's worth starting to get this seed into our minds that duality is also unity at the same time. It's two sides of one coin is a phrase we often use. Two halves of one whole. And it's very much a case of us getting the hang of being that. Actually seeing that we are two halves of one whole. Now, this means that inside us we have what is known as our inner self. You've probably all heard of that. We've all got an inner self, and some people know about it, and other people sort of go, well, and blah, 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 and push it away. And some people call the inner self the shadow self. Now, I do that, actually, but the shadow self is not bad. The shadow self is the unseen, the half-hidden, the thing that you're not sure is absolutely there. Was that a shadow just flicking across my eye, or was it real? So it's something that you are only partly conscious of, and perhaps even completely unconscious of. Now, rewilding yourself and then coming through that so you can revision your life is very much about connecting with this other half of yourself. So it's like we may know the sun half of this, the bright half, but we don't know the darker moon half. It's in the dark. We haven't seen it. We can't see it properly. So we learn to connect with that. And that, again, is what we teach. That's what my books write about. It's even what the novels write about. That's always there in the base of the story. And I use romance to do that with, and magic and mystery and all that kind of stuff. But it's there, this twisting of the two, the twining of the two, the coming together of the duality into the implicit unity. So that's where we're going when we rewild ourselves, when we rewild our hearts. Because once we're actually, where am I going next? Where am I going? No, I don't quite want to do that. Yes, I do. I found this picture somewhere, and somebody had actually sort of said, you know, your shadow self of the cat. But it isn't that perfect as the cat with a cat shadow on her back. Now, I think that's gorgeous. And it so says it. And it really means it, that you integrate your shadow self. You get to know the shadow self side of yourself. You get to know the inner side of yourself. And as I say on the right of the picture, when you are integrated, your inner shadow self actually has your back. And when you go wild, that's what happens. So we're getting into the rewilding and revisioning of your life. Because once you are this, once you're the cat with her shadow comfortably sat on her back, you are able to be whole. You're able to know yourself as whole. So all those worries that I was talking about earlier, you know, leaning against a tree and people thinking you're a loony and worrying about whether you should go in the forest or whether a badger's going to bite you or any of this kind of stuff, all of that goes away, disappears, and it just shrinks away into practically nothing. You remember it, but it's not there part of your life. And so there you are, able to take on the changes that will happen for you. And some of those are going to be quite big, you know. They really are. It could mean new job. It could mean your relationships change. You maybe even have to give up a relationship. And that's going to hurt a lot. But remember, your shadow self has your back. So it's going to be okay. It's going to feel like hell, but you're going to make it. And to make it through something, to give something up, is often much, much better than trying to hang on to it. I mean, if it is a relationship, surely it's better to free yourselves so that you can both go on, rather than hang on to each other and stay crippling yourselves worse and worse and worse. Well, yes, your shadow self can do that. Your shadow self will have your back, will help you go through all that. So being wild is being able to do that. Revisioning your life is being able to reclaim your power, to be the authentic you really want to be, and not the person hiding behind various masks because you feel you've got to. And you can stand there and say, no, sorry, not going to buy into that. My wild heart won't let me. You don't even have to say that, of course, but inside you'll know my wild heart won't let me do that. It sort of says, no, nothing's worth that. And that's really important to learn. It's really, really, really important to learn. So I think we're sort of coming up to where I'm supposed to stop. And we have just about. So if any of that speaks to you, which I hope it does, if you'd like to integrate your shadow self, if you'd like to go wild, if you'd like to rewild your heart and revision your life, reclaim your power, be authentic, well, come and see me. Join the apprenticeship. That's the best way of learning it. Takes a year to do, but I've had very, very few students who haven't thoroughly enjoyed it. And they really do rewild their hearts. They really do revision their lives and reclaim their power. And they do fulfill their potential, all of them. I've seen it. In fact, I'm still working with a couple from 20 odd years ago who have moved into their own lives and doing things. I mean, one of them's a sort of high-profile IT man in New York, but he does all of this as well. And he takes this actually into his IT job. And various others of them have taken it into their job too. I've got one at the moment. She's taking it all into her zero carbon work, which is really working as well. So it works. It works in the everyday life. It will help you in whatever kind of life you want to live. And it will help you live the life you want to live, not the life you feel you've got to live. So if you'd like to go wild, get in touch with me at the website at the bottom, elensentier.com, and book a call. We can have a chat about it. And hopefully you'll want to sign up for the apprenticeship or some of the other courses and really get wild yourself. So I shall see if I can't stop sharing now, which I can't. No. I shall escape from there and stop sharing. I hope. Can I get rid of that so I can see myself? I don't know. This is very difficult. Excuse me while I sort of mess around here. Yeah, I've managed it. So I hope that worked for you. I hope you've got some idea of what rewilding and rewilding your heart is about. And it's much more than all the things we can do, like rewilding our gardens and helping in the local wildlife, which is all part of it too. But it comes best when you've got the hang of it in your own heart, when you're really doing it from in here, and when you feel wild inside. So, I don't know whether there's any questions or anything like that that anybody wants to put up. I think I've got a couple of minutes for it. Oh, Sam, yes, I talk to my plants too, and the garden. And, well, who cares what your neighbours think? And I'm sure the plants and the gardens and everything else like that like it. My uncles used to talk to their plants, a couple of very good gardeners, and my dad too. And this is way back in the 1950s, so, you know, let's go for it. Let's do it. Let's do some more. So, any more questions? Or is Rachel going to turn me off in a minute? She probably is in a minute. But as I said, love to meet with you if you feel like coming. Have a digest of this, and it'd be really nice to see you for something or another, a talk, a chat, a course, the apprenticeship. So there I go. I think I'm going to sit back and see if anybody else has got a question. And yeah, of course, read my books as well, because they will tell you a lot about me, and that's always very helpful. And if you like to get on my website again, there's my weekly podcast, which will tell you lots of things as well that are useful. And I blog and sometimes vlog as well. So there's all sorts of things on there. And I'm just about to get a story page up where I should be putting up my own versions of the old Brythonic, sort of Welsh stories, but they're ones that have come to me from actually working in the places where they've come from, and so you can read that way as well. And all that helps you rewild it, all that helps you reconnect, because you see how the old ones before us reconnected. So I think that's it pretty well. So are you going to turn me off, Rachel, or not?